The following is a chat with a really close friend, Akshat Gurdi. Akshat Gurdi is a software engineer based in the United States, and he's worked at very notable companies like Meta and Verizon, now working on his own Web3 and artificial intelligence projects. In this sort of chat, podcast, sit down, we kind of go over my transition from optometry, trying to get into a tech role. So this will be really useful for anyone who's in the same situation, not particularly starting from optometry, but from a non-tech role, trying to get into tech. Akshat is also a very experienced software engineer, so he provides really good advice throughout the videos. So I'm sure this will be very useful for anyone who's in that similar situation or looking for any advice. Anyway, without further ado, I hope you enjoy.
Hey everyone, welcome to whatever this is. We're gonna have a fantastic podcast with Shivan, an optometrist turned programmer. He can fix your eyes and your computer. So you're in for the ride. And yeah, let's see. This should be a great conversation. I have background in tech. Shivan's getting into tech, and we should be able to learn about it. As programmers, we typically tend to only think about our problems, think about our tech problems and like all the things that we need to solve because we have a hammer, everything's a nail. But somebody who's coming from a different background, like optometry, they can see problems in a much different way and have a unique spin on tech and programming and whatnot. So welcome, Shivan. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Akshay. Thank you very much for having me. So, yeah, I really appreciate how like my perspective actually matters. But a bit about me. So, I'm from New Zealand, and I've been an optometrist for about 6 years now. So, I'm just getting into technology. So, I started learning programming back in March 2020. So, I started off with Python and just been consistently learning by creating projects. So, no boot camp, no technical background, no like studying. I've just been creating projects and for a few years now I've had one freelancing role, but I'm sort of just trying to get tech. At the current moment I am going through like an interview process, so maybe that's quite exciting, so we'll see what happens after that. And it was great to connect with. Actually, I think we connected over Twitch or Twitter. So yeah, that's another tip for anyone, like share your projects, share your like learning process online. I think it really inspires others and it's a great way to connect with others. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, sharing a journey is it's really interesting way of building a following or just having friends connecting with people online. And I'm learning that more and more recently. But what I'm interested in right now is like kind of hearing about your optometry experience. Like, why did you choose that? And like, why did you go in that line?
It's fun. It's a funny story. So I didn't really like I didn't really pick up like I didn't have a childhood ambition to do optometry. It was kind of when you're 18, so I'm 29 now. When I started university, I was like 18 years old. So I didn't know what I really wanted to do. So I tried a lot of things. I tried getting into medicine. I tried doing so in New Zealand's a bit different. So I know a lot of I don't know who's the audience, mainly the States, but in America, I know that you have to do an undergrad degree, then you do a postgrad degree. So you do like an undergrad in I don't know whatever major, and then you apply for like a school like optometry school or pharmacy or medicine. But in New Zealand, all you really have to do is you do like a 1 year intermediate year, and then based on how well you do in that year, you get into whatever like course. So getting into university in New Zealand is pretty straightforward. So once you do that first year, so I did my first year. It's called biomedical science. First year, like kind of an intermediate year. Then if you do really well, you get into this course. So I applied for many different courses. I didn't know what I really wanted to do. Leaning towards medicine, didn't get into medicine, so I did optometry. So optometry in New Zealand, it's a 5 year degree. So 1 year intermediate year, then 4 years on top of that. And then you're a qualified optometrist. I know in the US it's a bit different where you do an undergrad, you do your postgrad, and then you do stuff after that. And it's all state certified in the United States. New Zealand's a lot more straightforward. So I got into optometry, and when I graduated, like it was really cool. Like it's a job. I did enjoy university because like it's like it was a good time to like just learn, and you're in like a small class doing things together. But then yeah, I graduated, really enjoyed like the start of work because money, independence, that kind of stuff. Then a few years like into the career, I changed a few jobs, and then I kind of realized like it just hit me that it's just the same. So you're just kind of doing the same thing. And I wanted just a bit more, like I wanted more skills. And I felt like I was just kind of plateauing in my job, which is fine because a lot of people like they start families or they just they enjoy life. For me, I kind of wanted a bit more, so I started learning programming, like I said, back in 2020, March 2020, and that's where I kind of got really hooked. And I really wish that I could just, I don't know, somehow combine the two together in some way. So that's kind of like my origin story for programming. And I do think like in this, like now, it's you're probably better off having multiple sort of skill sets rather than just one particular skill set. I think in the future. Does that answer the question?
So yeah, like you fell into optometry, so you went towards the medical sciences, and you
Yeah.
you ended up going in optometry, doing that. And then how long did you work in that field for? I'm guessing 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it would have been 2020. So graduated 2016. Yeah, about 4 years. So like that's when like I was working for a corporate at the time, like corporate optometry practice, and I thought this is the first job. So if I don't really enjoy it, it's okay. Like if I switch to another job, maybe I might enjoy it more. I switched to another job, and I feel like I wasn't really scratching that particular itch, and that itch was like continuously learning and getting better. So in
Right.
March 2020, that's when I found 4 years in programming. Okay, I'll pursue this pathway. So, and like I think I wrote down somewhere like I wanted to because in optometry you help people one to one, which is good. But then I feel like with programming you can just scale your ability to help people just by tenfold, 10x. You can help thousands of people, hundreds of people, just like with writing on your computer, which is like it just blows my in front of a computer screen, which blows my mind.
So were you what in optometry were you doing? Were you the guy when I walk in and they're like putting different lenses in front of my eyes to figure out
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah. So for people who
route
don't
you were
know
doing?
much about the profession, yeah, yeah. So, and basically a role of optometrist. Some countries don't even have optometrists. You either have like a kind of a optician who does like selling of glasses. Then you have like a eye doctor who does like eye surgery, treats the eye. Optometry is kind of in the middle, you could say. So when you go to an optometry clinic, I'll be the person doing the eye test. So I'll be recommending. If you need glasses, I'll be recommending that. If you have an eye problem, like an eye infection, I have the ability to treat that. If it's something like if you need a surgery or something a bit more advanced, then I will be referring you to an eye doctor. But that was kind of like my role was kind of a sort of a clinical decision maker, yeah, and prescribing of glasses. That's kind of what my role was at the in optometry.
Okay. And after a few years of that, you're like, I've seen plenty of eyes, I've done plenty of these tests, I want to do something else.
Yeah, you can say that. So, like, the progression is you can either own a practice. That's what a lot of people do. They own a practice, or they can locum, or they just keep doing what I'm doing, being an employee. You can either own a practice, which is like another skill, another thing on top of that. You can increase your income by owning a practice. It's more skills like owning a business as well, which generates the interest. Um, or you can do what's known as locuming. Locuming is where a lot of people just like if a practice needs an optometrist to work X number of days, you work those X number of days. So you're kind of like contracting. That's another kind of option. But I think for me, I just have to be unique in some way. Like owning a business is not really like an optometry business doesn't sound like exciting. I think, yeah, just being able to program and do optometry is something that is unique. And like as a programmer, you can create your own one man company basically. Well, I'm not sure, but that's kind of like the idea. You can create your one man thing, or you can work for someone else.
Totally. I think it's like what things have built-in leverage, and like optometry and that the whole medical field seems lucrative. And
Mm.
but that the truth is that when you're working for somebody or you're working for another practice, there's usually a cap of like how much money you can make, and the people that end up making a lot end up owning their practices and like having a business and having equity, and those are the things
Mm.
that have leverage. So owning a business is leverage of labor essentially, because you have other people
Yeah.
working for you. But in programming, it's built-in leverage because code is like you're making products which have no expense of scaling essentially, right? So that's it's a good form of leverage, whereas it's harder to build a business which is not going to scale to that next level. But either one,
Yeah, that's the
that's
thing.
fun. That's fun. So like, okay, what did that? When was the first time where you're like, okay, I should really look into other different fields, and why did you pick programming?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's a book I read. It's like because I'm from this part of the world. There's a book called Barefoot Investor, which is just like any other kind of finance book, right? Programming and finance book. That kind of got me like that was my first sort of foray into realizing there's more to life than just work. Because I think, yeah, in the beginning you're excited, first job, getting money. Then you kind of want to figure out what I want to do with this money, like saving, investing, and then I kind of thought that yeah, I got more into like the kind of the productivity or kind of self-improvement area where you kind of what can I do to improve? And I felt like with optometry, it was really I was hitting that ceiling. Like I couldn't get more, right? I couldn't get better. So that's where I
What were
started learning
you
different things. Yeah.
what were you making in optometry? Or like what were you making, and like what was you think is like some of the top people make without owning a practice?
Yeah. Okay. So in New Zealand, the so I think salaries in America a lot more, but in New Zealand I was earning around about
Yeah.
75,000 New Zealand dollars,
Hmm.
and then I think it went up to $85,000, which is like I think it's okay in New Zealand. It's pretty decent in New Zealand. Definitely above median. I think median salary in New Zealand is about $50,000. I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, roughly that kind of range. And I think if you're a practice owner, I'm not sure what the practice owner would be getting. Like you maybe 200,
If
300, but I think you're yeah,
what if you're
you're
not a
you're
practice owner? It's like you're just like an
you're not a practice
expert
owner,
and
yeah.
like yeah.
Yeah, you're getting it. So there was a survey done recently, actually in 2022. So they just sent a survey out and asking people what the salary was, and like the range they got was between you can get from 100 all the way up to 225, which I think is really rare. The 225 is probably super rare depending on who you work for. Yeah, between 100 to 150 is kind of like what I've seen.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you would get in New Zealand dollars. That is, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure they're pretty close, New Zealand dollars and US dollars. But yeah, that's important. I think that's interesting to know just because
yeah.
first of all, I don't have any knowledge as to like what people make in different fields, especially in different parts of the world. And I think that there's a lot of people that are like in similar position as what you were a couple of years ago, where they're trying to like figure out which field to take next, or maybe they're already interested in programming and they're exploring it, but they might not know like, okay, this is what I make, this is what the max I can do here. But if I go into these different fields, the maxes or like the ceilings are a lot higher, and the opportunities that
Mm,
get there are a lot higher. So okay, so you're exploring different, you're kind of fed up with what you're doing, you're exploring different things, you're like, okay, you read this book,
mm.
and
Or
what
get into
happens
that kind
after
of like
that?
mindset. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
kind of kind of figure out, okay, I want to try different avenues of generating income, right? Like side hustling. Because
Yeah.
this is 2019, you know, how they got really popular. I guess it
Yeah.
still is popular. So going to like side hustling, I feel like with optometry, you can't really, there's no real way of deviating from that.
Yeah.
Try starting a blog, like so I learned about kind of designing a website using WordPress. So kind of
Mhm.
yeah, it's drag and drop. But then yeah, so like I starting to write about my career or write about like how I was just feeling. Yeah, and then I think I started learning programming like just from a YouTube video, like just copying a YouTube video back in like 2009, 2019. I can't remember exactly. But the problem with that is like I finished the YouTube video and then that was it. Didn't do
Mhm.
anything beyond that. And then I kind of just forgot about it for almost a year. And I think in March
Right.
2020, it was like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. So I got a book called Automate the Boring Stuff by Al Sweigart. So
Great.
fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's free. It's free online as well if you look at the web pages. Like he has got a website which is basically his book. But I bought the book. I was like, okay, I'm really going to take this seriously. I'm going to do all the practice problems in the book as well. It's not just copying like from a YouTube video. You just copy the code, right? Like I think it was a free code camp on Python. Like you just copy the code. I was going to do the
Sure.
problems, right? Because the key with the problems is you're thinking and applying the knowledge you're learning, because that's really important too. I think how you learn is really key. So how you learn programming compared to traditional ways of learning, like via lectures, is very different. Like when I was in high school, university, I was very like academically focused. So I just, like lectures, write notes. But then programming is very different. You have to like use, it's a skill you have to learn, right? It's like any hobby, right? If you learn a hobby, you don't just study the history of it, write notes about it. You actually go and do it. So coming back to the book, it had problems. I'll do the problems. It came to a point where I think I never finished the book entirely. I got like maybe 80% complete. Then I thought, hey, I got some ideas. I can make something. I can make what I want to make. So that kind of was the key. Like in order to learn programming, for anyone who wants to learn programming, the key is because a lot of people ask me how you learn programming. I think the key is to have your own projects, because the projects give you context on what you're learning. If you have that context, you're able to retain the information faster. For example, if you need to make a for loop or do this certain thing, this task, you have to research how to do it. It's relevant to you. It sticks you remember it and you actually have to implement it. So yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
definitely
that's
want
kind
to
of the
get
turn,
more.
turn phase. Yeah,
Definitely
turn
want to
phase.
get
Yeah, I
more
think
into like,
yeah,
yeah, we'll get into like how you actually learned it, or like where you think you are and all that stuff. But like, I'm just trying to see. It's like, okay,
yeah. I'm
what are the
jumping the gun.
motivations? You're jumping the gun,
Yeah,
you're running ahead, but like, no, I appreciate it.
yeah,
What are the motivations? Like, what were the motivations behind trying to learn, trying to get into this field? Um, I think that's like, if people can find, okay, this is where I am in the journey, and this is what the steps look like ahead of me. I think that's helpful. So, like, what do you think were the motivations? You said perhaps it was you saw the ceiling in your own career, right? So, in
yeah,
terms of that's maybe money and the growth, and second, maybe it's the excitement of working on something
mm,
cool that a lot of
yeah,
different people can use. But before you, so those are the things maybe that were kind of pushing you away from what you were doing,
yeah.
right? Or is there
I think
anything else?
yeah, I think two more things as well. One was obviously being unique. I think I talked about unique skills, having two unique skills. I think programming,
Sure.
optometry, really powerful skills to have. A third thing was remote work. So I think that really got
Mm,
like evident during like lockdowns we had. So I think in New Zealand we weren't too like we were pretty lucky where we just had a 1 month lockdown and like another like 2 week lockdown, so it wasn't too bad. But that's kind of like where I think for a lot of people, if you're stuck inside, it gave you time to like think about what you really wanted. And I
yeah.
think what I really wanted was remote work. That kind of like blew my
Right.
mind how you could just work from home and generate income. Like that's something I never even thought about. Like even prior to like starting, like, when I was 18, 19, that wasn't
Yeah.
really a thing back then. Like there probably was remote work, but it wasn't as popular, it wasn't even prevalent. And like the benefits of it too, like you could just wake up, you're with your dog, for example, you can walk your dog in the middle of the day. You can just, or you can do some housework while you're working, sort of thing. That kind of blew my mind because with optometry, you can't. You have to be in a fixed location to work. So that kind of opened my mind to what programming is capable of, and it's like a job where you need a skill, right? It can't just be simply outsourced to like the company can't just arbitrage the job somewhere else. You need to have, as a programmer, good communication. You need to understand the problem very well. You need to, it's a skill. So that kind of, that's like one really key motivating factor was remote work. And going on to that further, like I think things like digital nomadism is something that I want to aspire to as well. I think that digital nomad, like it's not about holidays and a different destination. It's more like you're meeting people who are doing the same thing, going out of your comfort zone versus I don't want to be in New Zealand my entire life, right? I want to experience different cultures, meet different people. And that's what optometry doesn't really give me that. Even though you can work in a different, I can work in Australia, but
Yeah.
it'd be just cool to, hey, go to Thailand, meet people who are like nomads too, share ideas, and they're most likely doing the same thing as well. So yeah,
You wanted that flexibility and freedom to be
flexibility.
able to,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a lot of people in 2020 when pandemic happened tried to like get into all kinds of different hustles. Either that's like e-commerce, drop
Mm.
shipping. I think a lot of people got into like stock trading with like Robinhood and all these different apps, and thinking they're like they can make a lot of money
Meet
through
some
yeah,
cryptocurrency too, right? Yeah.
cryptocurrencies, stocks, like
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff, option trading. And I think a lot of people got into like, okay, what kind of skills can I acquire in this time? Either that's writing or marketing or programming, right? And I
Yeah.
think that programming was definitely one of those top skills that if people did go into, they would be doing really well right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had the motivation, you tried a few things, you were like, programming seems like the thing to do, and you started automating some things. You went through this book. Uh, and then when did you were like, okay, this is I'm gonna take this a lot more seriously? Or was it just like a
Yeah.
slow grind, slow burn?
It it was a slow grind. So at the time I was living in a different city, working full time. And I
Yeah,
was just doing this all the stuff on the side or like even lunch breaks. I'll be just doing like learning stuff. Some projects that I really got into, like I think data science was like it was like the sexiest job or whatever, but I was really into data, and that's where Python came into play because obviously you got libraries like Pandas and NumPy, Matplotlib, Jupyter notebooks. I really got into like getting a CSV file and like playing around with it, showing some data on screen. So that was kind of like, yeah, just a slow grind. So like I was obviously working full time, so I didn't have the like I didn't have the energy to like really go full force on it. So I did that up until about 2021. So about what, a year a year or so, or just over a year, kind of like just doing it on the side. Like it was basically an obsession. So at work, I was supposed to be constantly thinking about programming or like wanting to do this more or wanting to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Then I kind of took the leap at the start or end of 2021. Like I moved
Hmm.
back home with my parents, sold the house that I was living in just to
Nice.
work part time to really, really focus on programming. And the way I'd focus on it was I was toying up the idea of going back to university to study, or I just keep grinding projects, make a project, apply for jobs, and just see what happens. So around about June 2022 was when I started streaming programming, just to share the journey, just to stay focused. The idea was not to like become a streamer. The idea was just to, it was a good way to stay focused, share your work, share your ideas out there. It worked really great because I met Akshat along the way. I've met a few friends on the way. So we're kind of working on projects together. Um, I kept up with writing as well. So in the beginning, when I was talking about writing, like having a blog, was more like about optometry stuff. But then eventually it became like writing was sharing the journey. And I was kind of posting on multiple social platforms. And the great thing about that is like you kind of meet different people who are on the same journey or people who want to support you on your journey as well. So yeah, that's kind of like where I met one guy kind of saw what I was writing about, how I wanted to build tools for optometrists, and that's where like another job kind of came up, or like a prospect that I'm still waiting on at the moment. I'm in the process of being interviewed for, but that kind of came up. So that now we're 2023, so it took time, but yeah, that's kind of that was the process. Yeah,
So right now you're interviewing. You've clearly
yeah,
got skills. You've clearly built some projects. I saw you build some projects with Django, and I'm sure in that process you learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right?
yeah.
Uh, and it's you're saying that's just slow grind. You were able to kind of find time in between your work or after work, and just kind of thinking about programming and solving those problems in your mind whenever you're not maybe at the computer right away, but you're thinking about it. And
You're
that
thinking about it.
happens.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that happens quite often when people are learning programming. They're just like, oh, maybe I could do this or maybe I could do that way. And that's pretty interesting. Okay, so
yeah,
a couple months, maybe a year goes by, and here we are, right? Or yeah, a couple of years go by, and here we are. You're now
it's almost three
interviewing
years.
for
Yeah,
different
yeah,
you're
yeah,
like interviewing for positions now. How's that process going? And how did that
yeah.
get started? Did you like meet someone who you just happened to have a connection with that
Yeah,
offered
so
you a
I'm
job?
I'm I'm just interviewing for one job really. So like when I was applying, it's a lot of decline letters, decline like sorry, and I think it could be the fact that, and it's a lot of the jobs I'm applying for are within New Zealand as well. So like I do a few theories. Like one is like it's normal to have like a 99% rejection rate. That's like the norm. Some other theories I have is like I'm not. I've got no qualifications. So like when you look at my CV, they're like this guy's probably applied for the wrong job. So because I did put down like I was an optometrist. Like I did put my cover letter. I do this, but I've created all these projects and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's completely normal. I think that's going to happen. So I met a guy. He's also an optometrist, and he works for a company that they create tools for optometrists, like sort of software tools for optometrists. So he's kind of like involved in this company. And then he got in touch with he's quite high up in this company as well. So he got in touch with like the CTO there, and the CTO basically he kind of set me up with him. Had a chat with him last week. Had like an interview. So and like just I was able to show one of my projects to him. And then we did like a little kind of like a little what do you call it, kind of a whiteboard session as well. It wasn't like a algorithm leak code; it was just a real simple problem. But the key was going through a project that I worked on previously, which was really cool because I was really excited to share that project with that individual. And it was a real simple like whiteboard session as well. So, and then we're just waiting for what the result's going to be, yeah, in the future. So that's kind of that's the process. Yeah,
That's amazing. I mean,
yeah,
kudos to you being you were able to like stick with programming for so long, and it's easy when you find it interesting, but still there's like hard parts. I think I have like videos of me when I was initially learning it back in
yeah.
2014, 2015. I'm like, what the fuck? This is stupid. Like this doesn't make any sense. This should work, but like you do it, and then there's this. I think Eric Weinstein. Is a guy who like kind of talked about this where it's like when you're learning something new it just doesn't make any sense and then like until just one day or just randomly this portal opens up where you can like walk through and see through and everything just
That's
kind of
that's
starts
totally
to make
true.
sense, right? It's
Yeah, that's
like
totally true. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally attest to that. Like you're sitting down, this bug is taking ages to solve. It's like I feel like you feel like you want to give up sometimes, but if you just sit in front of the computer, go for a walk, and sometimes I don't know when you go to sleep, the morning you wake up, it's like solved. You know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's like you just have to find a way to find that portal. So like I think there's like if you I think with online resources, this is easier because before it's like maybe your teacher or in college they're trying to show you one way of doing it or learning this, but
yeah,
that's not maybe the way you would understand this. So you have to kind of find your own portal to understand those things. But I know you don't know much about my background, so I can give you a shorter
yeah,
version of what my background is, and then like something that I do or quite often because I see a lot of programmers, even really good programmers, trying to get jobs and trying to maybe switch their careers into programming and trying to find these positions. That I help those people, do that and find jobs and get talk to recruiters and do interviews, clear those positions and maximize what they can get paid because a lot of people in those positions tend to undervalue themselves and then take positions that that are just underpaid, and if they're underpaid they might not be the best place to learn, and there's all kinds of things. So
yeah,
this is something I do quite often. I really enjoy it because I just hate seeing good smart programmers not get paid. uh,
yeah,
so yeah, so my background is I started programming when I was in high school. Started with some JavaScript, but like HTML, CSS wasn't fun at the time. There was no Flexbox or grids and stuff like
yeah,
that. So it was just a
yeah,
pain in the ass. So that's why I went into game development, did a bunch of like Unity with C Sharp and Unreal Engine, C++, did some
yeah,
mobile game devs and those things. Uh, and then after graduating high school, I was running a few businesses, and I didn't want to go to college because I was like, I can just do everything like on my own. I can run these businesses and grow them. But my sister, being from an Indian family, my mom parents did want me to go to college, of course, and
yeah.
I told them I wasn't going to go, and then my mom just like started crying, and my sister convinced me to
Mm,
go and just check it out, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to go, it has to be in a place where I can find the best connections in the tech industry,
yeah,
because my businesses weren't very tech focused. But I was like, okay, let's go do the startup route. So I picked San Jose State, which is in San Jose, super close in the middle of like all the tech area, a lot of different
mm,
people, a lot of connections, a lot of startups right around that area. So I did that for a little bit, joined a few startups, started a startup in college. And then just after first year of college, I was like, this is so stupid. This is so slow. Like, there were some good professors, but like I was helping like seniors do their exams and stuff like that. It was simply just because I guess maybe I just had a background in the thing, or just a fast learner, but it felt too slow. So I was like, okay, I don't want to go back to college after this first year. So I just went and I was like, okay, I need to go find like a uh, reason to drop out of college, because just saying that, hey, I'm going to go do the startup is not good enough of a reason for my parents, or frankly for myself either. So I was like, okay, what do people really want from a graduation? They typically want to get a job at like one of these big tech companies. They want to secure their future and their career. So I'm like, okay, what if I just go get that now? What if I just go get a job at Facebook, Google, Amazon, or one of these companies right now? So that's exactly what I
mm.
did. We had a 3 month gap, and I just interviewed at a bunch of places, got hired at Facebook, because they don't know my age. I'm 18 at the time. Uh,
Ah,
yeah, and I go to the interview, clear the interview, and then I started working there. And then nobody could say that I should go back to college because it didn't make any sense. And then I worked at Facebook for a while, made some friends, left and worked at Verizon, Yahoo for a while, and then after working there, they wanted me back at Facebook, so I went ahead and like joined Facebook again. And after a couple of years, I left that, and I've been in the Web3, like crypto space, AI space, and just kind of doing my own thing, being
yeah,
consulting with different companies and people. Yeah, so that's kind of roughly the background. In between, there's like a lot of other things that I've explored, different things that I've done. But pretty ingrained in the tech space.
Wow, that's really cool to like hear your story, man. Yeah.
Yeah, that's roughly like a shorter version of it. And um, you didn't really ask for any advice, but like I think
Yeah,
it
no,
would be
no, hit
useful.
me. Yeah.
I hate giving like advice that's unasked for,
No.
but it's like, what is? Let me ask you first. Like, are you looking to? Well, first of all, are you working right now?
Yeah, so I'm working part time as an optometrist now, so just 2 days a week. Then the spare time is just grinding and building stuff. Yeah.
And are you looking for a job in tech?
Yeah, so that's like obviously got this job lined up, which is like it's pretty much like almost a dream job to me because like I understand the context of like what it's being used for,
Yeah.
and it's like it's yeah, you know what I mean. Um, yeah, I this is where I'm kind of like torn between two things. I don't know if I want to be like because I want to work for kind of like not myself, but I want to work on things that are really meaningful. If that makes sense, rather than like the paycheck. Because like if it were the paycheck, then I can always go back to my current profession, right? Like in terms of money, it's a optometry is stable, it pays decently well. But I want to create things that are just have meaningful impact. So it sounds quite fickle. It sounds a bit silly, but during my journey of like streaming and showing content and making things in public, I met a guy who introduced me to the idea of indie hacking. So, Peter levels and yeah,
Yeah.
so that kind of stuff really is that's like a very long term vision of mine. But like, if you somehow make an application or multiple applications and then because it's yours, it's like your baby. It's so motivating to work on. Because the hardest thing is like to do work that isn't motivating. That's what I'm most afraid of. Working for kind of it's not about like working on someone else's dream, but it's just stuff that isn't really gelling with you. That's kind of like something I'm really worried about. And that could be in any career, right? Even if you switch careers, you can still walk into the same trap. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, it's a bit complicated. Like, yeah, I want to get into tech, but I also want to be able to like do kind of like the Peter levels indie hacking sort of stuff. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I mean, totally.
yeah,
I think those guys are really cool. I follow them
yeah,
on Twitter and I see all their shenanigans and whatever they're doing. I think it's really cool to build in public and definitely find it aspiring. Like that's kind of what I've been doing as well, right? So it's
yeah,
like, yeah, all these different companies that I've worked with and all these different projects that I've worked with, some really really interesting cool things that I built, but it doesn't quite feel additive or in a way where it's like, if I'm continue to build this over a longer period of time, it's going to snowball into perhaps something
a
big, or
huge
like,
application. Yeah,
yeah, but like these applications that I work on for, let's say, other people, they're really interesting to work on. But like,
Hmm.
I can never justify working on them for 5 years, 10 years. Whereas, like
Hmm.
when you work on something yourself, like you really see the progress that happens over a longer period of time, and uh, that's what's like exciting now. It's gone
Yeah,
from uh, getting experience and experiencing all these different areas in tech, which is like the startups, the big tech companies, the indie hacking, to like, okay, now let's build something that's worth working on, uh, and that brings in uh, a certain amount of money, whatever that happens to be. But I don't know. There's like Nikita Beer. Is I don't know if I'm saying his name right. I'm sure you saw his acquisition of gas recently. Like I see this
uh,
happen
yeah,
all
yeah.
the time.
The Discord bought them, right? A Discord was it
Yeah,
Discord acquired? Yeah, okay, yeah.
it's like I see it all happen all the time where it's like these guys build a company from scratch and then they're able to get acquired, and it's super fun.
Exit. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay, yeah. The exit. Or like you can do what a Peter Levels does, just like the
yeah,
income is basically that's kind of that's expiring too. But then the idea is like there's this huge ocean of variety out there versus like optometry is either you own a practice. It's like three options, right? Versus like tech
yeah,
is just such a vast ocean, and like
right,
even it's not just about making money. I think tech's just such a powerful tool to help people create influence, like do things. So
right.
yeah, that kind of that's inspiring as well. But I'm very like fresh to the field, so the issue with that, but with the issue of being new is like a very I don't know, very idealistic and very I've not been slapped by reality just yet. You know, like they're obviously like
That's a good thing. So they say
yeah,
like
yeah,
in let's say the VC world or like the investor world, they're like, it's these like someone who's new to the field or someone who's new to startups is actually great because they're not held back by the boundaries that people put on themselves over time when they're in a certain field, and it's just like they're
yeah.
they're almost uh, uh, naively naively good. I don't remember the exact word, but
Okay, no,
like
I think I know what you mean. Like they're almost like a pioneer. Like they're willing to go on the boat to look for another land. Versus there be people
yeah,
who have like I don't know, they're in the Navy. They come and they're like, I don't want to be on a ship to search new things. I just want to be go home,
right,
have a. And then it depends where you are in the stage of life, right? Like I guess if your family, you've got kids, um,
mm,
you don't want you want to play it safe, right? You want to kind of safe career, get a
totally,
job, get money. You don't want to be laid off or like not have a job the next week. You can, but then versus now I'm like I've got pretty much no dependents, no big responsibilities. I want to be risky because I think I don't know if you're a fan of My First Million, the podcast My
I
First Million,
love
Sam
those
Parr,
guys.
Sean Puri. Yeah.
Yeah,
So like yeah, I
love those
think
guys.
there was one podcast. I think Sean Puri it was just Sean Puri doing a solo, and he said that for like I hate calling myself an entrepreneur, but I think I've got the spirit of one. And you're saying like with that type of with an entrepreneur, like there's mediocrity, like which is just doing the average, go home, get a paycheck, go home, enjoy life. Like that's cool to have, but then that's the biggest risk for an entrepreneur. Not actually like doing something risky is not the
Yeah,
riskiest thing an entrepreneur could do. Yeah, so like mediocrity is the worst thing you could do, and then I think I'm worried about that. Like I want to take a risk and do something. If it fails, it's okay. Then you just think why you failed, go back, self reflect, try something new. So I think that's
yeah,
kind of like how you approach indie hacking, where you just have an idea, fix your own problem, and then put something out there like very low, like obviously like don't overcomplicate it. Put something out there, see if it gets adopted by the market, see if there's interest, and then work on that idea. If not, new idea. And that's where you
got
learn a
it.
lot, right? You learn about being very lean. Because I think a lot of if you work for a company, it's a lot of like like a lot of faff that goes on, a lot of like what tech stack to use, what like how should we implement this feature, how do I write this piece of line of code versus that's not really important. The most important thing is to build something and please the customer, not please your colleagues, but please the customer. That's really appealing to me. And then it's sort of a self-discovery where you need to figure out you almost need to be egoless because you need to put stuff out there and like it may be rejected, and then you have to be okay with rejection and move on to the next thing. And you also need to realize if something's not going to work. Yeah, so it's kind of all that tied into one. That's what really, yeah, it's really inspiring. Versus like it's not just I hope not rambling or going nowhere, but you're just kind of yeah. It's challenging. In other words, it's challenging. Overcoming challenges is what gives life its meaning.
Right,
Sorry about that
absolutely.
ramble.
No, not at all. I think it's like insights we see from the people that we admire and like the people we follow, and they've clearly done shit, right? So Sean Puri, Sampar, I love those guys, and I think there's a lot
Yeah,
of takeaways that I get from watching their podcast and like seeing their
yeah.
journey, and like definitely kind of aspire to be somebody like them because it's like I often say this to my friends. It's like I don't really want to be famous or be
Mm,
known for doing content. So like I could go out and become like a content creator and just like make these videos and try to get famous off of that. But that's just not as cool
mm.
as like building a product, a company that like people use, and then uh, being a business person first, an entrepreneur first,
Yep,
and then it's
yeah,
like okay, cool,
absolutely.
I make content. And I think those guys, that's what those guys are doing, absolutely right. And
Yeah, I think there's going to be a big shift, right? Like, oh, I guess it's always going to be people who are kind of the influencer, you'd say, like just they like what they do is like content creation is their job versus content creation for you or me maybe is like a tool to just share ideas. So I think even Sean Puri has a good line. He says like, I don't want to be well known. I want to be known well. So like
known
the
well.
idea
Oh
is
yeah,
not to be famous. Yeah, not to be famous, but to be like if someone who really resonates what we're talking about listens to us and
yeah.
they want to do something with us, then yeah, business opportunities lie with that. That's what I think creating content's all about, right? It's not really about the follower count. You want to make the followers count. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Oh,
like not the
okay,
number of
okay.
followers. You want to make the people who follow you like count, and you want to give them as much
Absolutely.
value, and you want to get value.
I,
Yeah.
I definitely follow some people on Twitter that don't have many followers per se, but they're, let's say,
Mm,
there's this one guy who he always talks about ZK proofs, which is like zero knowledge proofs, and like ZK stuff in cryptocurrency, and he happens to
mm,
be like an auditor, someone who like makes sure your smart contracts are like they don't have any bugs, no issues, right? And it's like, okay, if I was to go write a smart contract tomorrow or working with a company, who would I hire to be like, okay, I need my contract audited? I would go to that guy because I follow him. I see him tweet about this stuff. I know he's like uh, he's a great person to reach out to for something like this. And even though he doesn't have many followers, it's simply because I know of him that he exists and he seems like a kind of guy I would want to work with. He will get my business. And I think it's kind of like that, where it's like I want to make these friends and these connections across the world, almost like, what other time could have I made a friend in New Zealand sitting in California? That's
yeah, it's a
amazing.
crazy world we live in. Yeah, it's really crazy world we live in. I've got a question for you about Web3, and because I do think it's like a blue ocean. So have you heard about blue ocean, red ocean? The like idea where like it's like red oceans where things are so competitive, things are really cutthroat. It's
Hmm.
like everything's commoditized. But I think with Web3, it's very blue ocean where it's like very there's not a lot of people there. I think it's had its hype, right? Like it was hyped up, and now it's come to a stage where we're gonna get. It's kind of like the .com bubble back in the day. It's just like a repeat of that, right? So it's kind of finding out what's working. Do you ever worry like because of like the negative? Like for what I'm seeing, it's been pretty negative recently with Web3. What do you think it is now? Do you think there's potential, or does it bother you at all? Or you're not phased?
It doesn't really bother me. I
Yeah,
know the fundamental reasons why I believe in the technology. Now, there's a lot of bad actors in the space, and there happens
yeah,
to be a lot of hype, and there's a lot of things that I'm like, okay, that's a bit sketchy. That's a bit like, I don't think like those are bad for the space, but
mm,
I'm not really worried as long as the fundamentals don't change. Like, why I believe in Bitcoin and why I hold it, that really hasn't
yeah,
changed, or like why Ethereum is such a game changer compared to some of the other things. Like, uh, I truly believe in those, and I'm kind of a person who is
mm,
like always skeptical of the governments and like anybody who's in power. So it's like there's such a great counterbalance to that. So it's like, okay, great, the space is here to stay, and
yeah,
we're already past the point where it's like it has to prove itself. Like, this is going to happen over the next decade.
yeah.
uh, I'm very certain about that. But either way, I'm always like open to different kinds of technologies. But yeah, I'm not worried about Web3 going away or something like that.
No, no negative. And like, do you like many of your friends? Like, how do you have a lot of friends who are in the Web3 space, or do you have like friends who are, let's say they're like not even the tech world, but they watch the news on the stuff? I mean, when you tell them I work in Web3, what do they say?
That's hard to say. That's hard to say.
Yeah,
I think being in California, it's already like everybody's kind of knows at least a little bit about tech. But if they're like
yeah.
completely not aware and they're seeing like all this stuff, crazy stuff happen, I haven't really ever gotten a bad reaction from anybody. They're like, "Oh, you work in Web3 space." They're just like, "Okay." It's a
No, that's cool.
complex space. It's a complex space. It's
Yeah, I
like,
think in California, Bay Area, right, or just California
yeah,
in
Bay
general.
Area.
It's
I
I
was
get
in
Bay Area. Yeah,
Yeah, I was in SoCal for a while, for like a couple of years. Beautiful place to live at. It's like beaches, downtown. Like there's all different kinds of vibes. I loved Southern California. Have you visited US?
I've been to US like for a week. I was in Boston and New York.
Okay,
That's it, but not like just for a week though. I was like I wasn't there for long, but yeah, definitely should
okay,
like check it out in the future. But yeah,
definitely.
because like I always worry like because a lot of my because like now like I'm kind of changing my kind of identity basically pretty much. So I've got a lot of friends who are still in optometry and they're kind of happy with their careers. Or like I've got friends, even high school friends, because like I'm now living in a town like my old hometown. So like I caught up with high school friends and like it's hard to talk about. It's easy to say, hey, I'm an optometrist, I do this, like simple
Yeah,
conversation, right? But we talk about things
right.
like, oh, I want to be an indie hacker. oh, I want to get into programming, or even like talking about Web3 NFTs. It's just like it's scary to even mention that sort of stuff to them because like they're not in that area for one thing. And
Yeah.
they think you're completely crazy. So it's kind of like that's the yeah, that's another challenge I have as well. So I was writing this morning about like kind of like my feelings on this topic, and it's like I think a lot of actions we take, we do it because of how we think other people are going to perceive us. So like for a lot of people, they don't do what they
Mm,
really want to do because they're too scared of what other people will think, what your parents, even my parents, even like what they might think.
yeah.
Yeah, so like a lot of people do live in like I do feel kind of sorry for those people. Like they live in kind of like this world where like they're not really being themselves. And like
Hmm.
coming back to programming, like or doing making a change, it's hard. Yeah, like that stuff's hard because we talk to other friends, they're gonna be either think you're a bit weird, a bit crazy, or like what's up with this guy, or some people will support you, but yeah, that's kind of things I think you have to if someone wants to make a switch, they kind of have to think about that. So you need to come up with like what you're gonna say. When you go to social settings, you need to have some kind of script in your mind about what you're gonna tell people you're doing. And it may not be the truth.
Absolutely.
So
Dude,
yeah.
absolutely. I think I'm back at my in my hometown, or at least the my high school town. So I came to US when I was like 15ish. So I did my
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
couple years of high school here. So I'm back here at my parents, living with my parents back because I just was in SoCal for a couple of years and I had too much fun, so I had to come back here for the grind. So I'm back here,
Yeah.
you know, with my parents. So I think we're kind of uh, in a similar boat there, but it's like interesting because my parents don't know what I'm doing. Like I don't think they understand. Like first
No.
of all, fully understand internet, Web 2, and then understand Web 3, and then within Web 3 understand NFT space. And I think it would be kind of boggling. They'd be like, you work on these like images of cartoons and what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like it would be kind of weird. And it's like I also wrote down we're doing things that like would be harder to explain and maybe not perceived well exactly, where it's like, okay,
Mm.
I definitely care about what other people think. I think that's hard to take
Yeah.
out from your system, but I care more about what I think is cool, right? So how cool do I perceive myself to be? And that's pretty important. It's like, if I did this thing, would I think I'm cool? And that's like the most important. If I doesn't really matter if anybody else thinks calisthenics is cool. If I'm able to do a muscle up, do I think I'm cool? Oh yeah, that's dope. Versus like doing something else. There's a lot of things that like my friends might care about that I don't particularly care about at all. Like let's say luxury cars or like sports cars, and I don't really care. If I had one, I would be like, that's cool, but it's not that important. Uh, but going
Mm.
back to the topic of indie hacker, what do you think? What's your plan? Like, since it, I'm sure you've considered doing a lot of things within the space. What are you thinking about if you had to make a product? Give us a live idea.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I had a few things lined up. So one was at work, I really hate writing referral letters. So a referral letter is basically, let's say you have some eye disease or eye problem I can't treat. I need to refer you off to like an ophthalmologist.
yeah.
So like it'd be great if you could just send an instant message to a doctor, right? But no, you can't do that. You got to write like a letter. So like, dear sir, madam, all your results put in there. So
Hmm.
because of Chat GTP making text generation really popular, I had this idea where you type in like a phrase like this person has right eye this disease, left eye this disease, this is their vision, and it auto populates the letter for you, and you just copy the text, and that's it. See, I have a live demonstration. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, let's see it. I don't know if
Yeah,
how
yeah.
we're gonna do it through this, but
I think I
maybe.
can just kind of share. Yeah, can we share screens on all this, or is it too primitive?
I don't know. We should be able to. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. Let's
Cool.
see.
Yeah, all I have is oh, I got resolution. That's about it. Yeah, all I can do is share my screen. Do you have like a is it like a owner version?
I'm looking through it. Let's see.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm gonna go tweet at Theo.
Feature request. Yeah, that's another whole world for me. Is like feature requests, like the lingo, But yeah, Peter Level's really, so he's got a book called Make. And I think it's really yeah, it kind of changed my perspective. I've not read the whole book, but it kind of changed my perspective on like building stuff. So there's a lot of like extraneous things that don't really matter in the tech world. Like it's crazy how he built most of his products using PHP and jQuery. You know, those are old technologies. So it just
Hmm.
goes to show you don't need you don't need to have the most up to date. There's so much going on. There's so much noise going on. It doesn't actually matter. So just focus on the essentials.
Yeah.
There's another podcast I listen to. It's a Django Chat podcast with Will Vincent and Carlton Gibson. They're like two Django fellows. Sorry, one guy's a Django fellow, the other guy's like he creates content for Django learning material. And they had a guy called Andy Ide on there. So Andy Ide's he's an Australian dude, and he made this website called Horse Records.
Mm.
And the really inspiring thing about that one man team, Horse Records, just hosted on a virtual remote server, right? No Kubernetes cluster, no like nothing fancy. All the media is served via like on the same virtual machine. And I think he uses SQLite database as well. You know, like fancy database either. All on a single virtual machine. It's profitable. It's like it's Australia. All the horses in New Zealand. Sorry, in Australia. Some in New Zealand as well. And he's going to other countries as well. One man team, super simple Django setup, one single virtual machine, and yeah, it's kind of that kind of blows my mind as well. How like it doesn't have to be super complicated, you know. So yeah, but I think it is important too to have unit tests and a good test setup, good like methodologies, but you can balance it up. So I'll send you a link. Actually, sorry for chatting, but that's like here's a little demonstration here. So it's basically just a fast API. It serves you a Ginger template, and then you can type in random like your name, the optometrist name, who you want to address the letter to, and the contents of it. You hit submit, and then it generates the letter.
I generate the letter, so I can say Shivan is my optometrist, and address
Yeah.
to
Just to just
specialist.
say specialist, yeah, or you can write even patient letters. So like if a patient wants a letter or eye report,
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
specialist, and then I can say so what
just say
my
good
issue
vision or something,
is.
yeah, yeah. Just say I'll type it down for you. You could be like so macular degeneration is like a common eye disease for people who get older. So I've just typed it on chat there. Oh, it's not spelled right.
Okay,
Macular
so I say patient name
degeneration.
and then optometrist and address to. Okay, I'll address to the patient, and then
Yeah.
submit, and it'll go. Is it using the OpenAI API?
Yeah, API, yeah. So it's not perfect, but it's a proof of concept, right? And I just shared it with
Right.
so there's an optometry group for Australian optometrists and New Zealand optometrists. So I just sent that link to them and just see if there's like gains any interest. You know, that's kind of like that's one idea, right? And then if it gets really popular, then okay, I'm sitting on gold here. Then you start
Yeah,
working on it.
yeah,
It
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
it didn't really gain much traction, so that's all right. But that's kind of like the idea, right? I built something really. It took me a weekend to make this, and then yeah, and it was. I think the hardest part was yeah, this is what I'm finding, man. Like the AI portion is it's not really AI. It's just calling it API. But that's the
It,
easiest
it
part.
is.
That's the part that's the most valuable part. The hardest part was like setting up the Ginger template, or even like deploying it actually as well was the hardest part. You know, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
So
Which could we do?
yeah,
It just generated like this little paragraph for me
yeah,
when I just type that in. This is pretty cool because like maybe it's just like you don't want to sit there and explain what macular degeneration is to your patient, but
yeah.
like ChatGPT can just do that for you, and you can double check it here, huh?
Yeah, double check it. And like, because a lot of people may want a letter be sent, like, because there's the whole logistics of, oh, I've got to write a letter, I've got to, yeah, like, this kind of does it for you, makes it a bit easier. So, yeah, when I put it on the optometry group, one person asked, and they were like they're the admin for the group, as well as the fact they were like kind of they're an eye surgeon. They asked like, could you just make an ability to do text to chat, like sorry, speech to text, rather
Mm,
than like me typing down. So I could just be like, oh, right eye macular degeneration, submit, and then instead of having
yeah,
to like type it in. So it's kind of like, okay, there's some like future, future feature involved, But it's
interesting.
great. Yeah, that's kind of
See
like one
that
idea I
is
had.
something I would never think about, right? Because I just don't know the space. But like somebody who's from the
Yeah,
space learns tech, uh, just knows so much more about that space and like what people actually need. So that's where I think you can find definitely some really great ideas. And
Mm.
that could potentially be one of them. Uh, yeah, I'm sure you're gonna keep trying, right? That's the
Exactly.
whole
Yeah. So it's
game.
about iteration. I think yeah, there's gonna be a lot of failure on the way, a lot of yeah, but just keep trying, right? Like I think that's it's a life thing. I know it's a life skill to have, right? It's like you're gonna try. There's like so many things you're gonna do in your life. You're gonna fail at it. And like don't look at the failure as a reason to stop. Like look at why you failed, not failed, but look at why it didn't pop off, for example, and then fix it for the next time. Change, and then that's where the ego is really important, right? Because the ego wants you to be the same, right? So you got to like look at
Mhm.
yourself and yeah. So I don't know. It's sorry to get spiritual and woo woo, but that's kind of like what this means to me. Versus, I just feel like if you're working in a job where you're just turning up, but I talk about it so much, you just turn up, go home. You're not really changing, is it? You're not becoming a different person. You're not like exploring different avenues of yourself, and I think that's what makes you feel alive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you there. And are you? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a family?
I've got family. I don't know. Well, not. I don't have family of my own, but I do have like my parents. But no partner, no partner. So I was in a relationship that kind of didn't work out. But I'm happy. Yeah, I just want to really explore who I am, and then just really, really change the person. And hopefully, someone will come in when the time is right. So yeah. But I know what I want now, and I want to be building stuff, man. Building cool stuff in public, inspiring
Right. Yeah.
people, inspiring myself. Yeah, and then yeah.
Okay.
So I think
Sick.
yeah, I heard somewhere like in order to like to like the biggest thing you could do to improve your life is to be completely selfish, but selfish in the way that it's selfless. If that makes sense. Like what I mean by that is you do something that you makes you feel very energized, but it has to help others. So that's why I think tech is being able to create a business, entrepreneurship is really like you're not making a lot of money, but the money you make is like a byproduct of you being able to provide value to the world at scale. Yeah.
100%. Do you know who Naval is?
Naval Ravikant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's an angel investor for Twitter, right? So he's a quite famous guy for just being a modern day philosopher, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's pretty
Yeah.
accurate. I can definitely imagine you liking some of his podcasts, or like he has
Yeah.
some of these videos that are like, how to build wealth, right? And it's like a
Mm.
mega podcast of like a couple hours, and talks all about like leverage and luck, and how to, like, money is a byproduct of you giving society what it wants at scale. So like some of those ideas definitely uh, match. I think you would really enjoy listening to him. Check it out.
Yeah, definitely look it out. And I think you want to do it ethically too, right? You want to be ethical in the way you make money as well. And there's some things like I do think about, oh, like is this ethical? Not ethical, but it just feels like you obviously know that you got the levels of wealth, right? Like if you're working on the front lines, you do the most work, but you get the least reward. Versus like, let's
Yeah,
say the analogy, this is my first million. Like they talk about the guy who builds the house, right? The guy who moves the bricks, brick by brick, builds it, earns the like does the most work, earns the least. But the guy who's like the property developer is in a second house in a holiday home, sipping on margaritas, is getting the most
yeah,
money out of it. But he took on the most risk. Um, but that does get to me, and I feel like if you're an indie hacker, you're kind of doing everything right. You're like on the front lines, and you're getting the rewards as well. You're not just paying a developer to build your dream. You're like building a dream. Yes, that's what appeals to me as well. I don't know if you're the same. Like I don't want to be someone who just like the entrepreneur who just delegates all their tasks away and you just live an awesome life. I don't want to be like that either. I kind of want to struggle too. Does that make sense?
yeah.
It's a bit
I
weird.
think it's
I want to work. Yeah.
I,
Not just be like a
there's
guy who
like
pays people to work.
I want to, the way I think about it is like I want to experience all kinds of flavors, right? So I
Yeah.
want to be on the front line building those things. I want to be like a full-on indie hacker, but I also want to experience what it's like to build something for the sale, for the exit, and have that exit. And for that exit, you need
Mm.
somebody, you need things to be delegated. You need yourself to not be a critical part of that company. So I want to experience all of these
Yeah.
different things. It's definitely exciting. So something that I was one of the things that I did at Facebook was like I was building this product, but I never really had interacted with the users. And then like one day I actually like biked over to the people that were using my application. It was like an internal application, and like I saw them using it, and they were like, it was making their job so much easier. And I was like, ah, shit, this feels amazing, and
Good.
like I had that
Yeah.
warm feeling. And oh man, that was incredible. And that's when I was like, okay, if I'm going to be building on applications, I better know how my users are using it, and like be able to interact with them. uh, yeah, I think we're gonna see each other building stuff, indie hacker stuff, on Twitter and like all kinds of ways. Let's start a group chat with like I already have a group chat with like some of my friends who are working on like different companies and startups and
Wow.
these
That's
products.
incredible, man.
Yeah, we should definitely. I should add you there, and we're gonna have fun. I'm working on some projects myself. Like what I'm working on right now is like an AI video editor.
Mhm.
So basically, what it does is takes in. Let's say you record a talking head video. Let's say you're talking about your experience in optometry, and you just record I don't know 30-minute video, and that video is going to have multiple takes of you talking about something. It's going to have like ums and ahs and silences. So what this thing is going to do is it's going to take in that video, remove all this like different random silences, the different takes, the bad takes, the ums and ahs, and do its best to create like a first draft of the video and create
Yeah.
like an XML file so you can open
Yeah.
it in any video editor that you use, right? So like what video editor do you use, for example?
I use Final Cut Pro, yeah. So you could like edit. Yeah, I use there's an app called Recut. All it does is just look at the sound levels. That's it. So if it sees silence, or cut it
Recut?
out. But that's really Recut. Yeah, Recut. It's an Apple. It's an iOS app, I think. Not iOS. It's an OS app. Sorry, Mac OS app. Recut. So all it does is just like, it looks for silences, or like you can set the amount of like a what do you call it, threshold.
Yeah.
It'll just cut that out, and you could like you can do the times as well. So that'd be really cool. And like, can I understand context? So like, let's say you're just blabbering on about nothing, or you repeated
Mhm.
yourself multiple times. Can I identify that and be like, I'll get rid of that, or not really? Not yet.
No, that's the goal. So like this is just the
Yeah,
first version of it, right? So like
of
ideally
course.
what it
Yeah,
would
yeah,
be, ideally what it will do is like take out all the random takes, take out the silences, ums and ahs, and then chop it together, make sure that it understands the context and like what sentences are important for it, let's say, and then do
yeah.
zoom in, zoom out, right? You know what typically a lot of
Oh
YouTube
yeah, yeah,
videos,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
you
yeah,
know,
like something really important, and like it does the captions sometimes. Yeah, yeah, that'd be
yeah,
really cool.
captions sometimes, and then be able to like take it and convert it into short form content perhaps and like add the caption so it'll already have transcribed
Yeah,
and
that's really good.
I'm using like Whisper and stuff to transcribe the audio and then have to do all kinds of analysis on top of that and be able to chop it up. But as a first iteration, I think it's good to just be able to like figure out the first like if I can just fix the first 10-20% of the video editing process, which is going over the video once and taking out all the bad takes,
Mhm.
I think that's valuable. And then building on top of that is should be valuable as well. I'm working with some YouTubers to like get feedback from them, but I didn't know about Recut. I'm gonna test this out. Is it its own application or does it export to Final Cut Pro or something?
It's its own application, so you can like if you want to save XML files, you can. So you can use it in any editor you want. So yeah, that's kind of it's just its own standalone application. And basically, what you do is you just open your raw video into that, and then you can get it sliced up, save the XML file, open it up in Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro or whatever app you use. So yeah,
Interesting.
Recut. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely got to check it out. I've been doing a lot of research in the space. There's something similar called ViceCut, but their problem is
Mhm.
that you have to upload the video over to their platform, and then the video editing from there. They're going to transcribe and stuff, but and try to edit it, and then the rest of the editing you have to do in their like web video editor essentially, which isn't
Oh, because that's been
uh,
annoying. Yeah.
yeah, that's annoying. And then I think a lot of professionals are not going to like that because all the import and exports are going to reduce the quality of the video, which is a
Yeah.
no, it just doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. So I
Yeah.
think that that's not the right path.
Okay. And thinking about your target market, so it's definitely going to be YouTubers. Would it be like moderate, like big channels, small channels? And how about like, would you ever market to just video editors rather than like YouTubers, if that makes sense? Because a lot of like, I feel like a YouTuber would, when they start getting money, will try and hire an editor, and the editor
Yeah,
will be the one who like gets the most value out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely it will be video editors. A lot of YouTubers
Yeah.
are not able to hire out their video
Yeah.
editing because it's not easy to find video editors. But yeah, ultimately it's geared toward it'll be geared towards video editors. And
Mm,
this space somehow it's not the most lucrative space, but somehow I keep coming back to the content creation space and wanting to build for them. So that I'm finally leaning in.
perfect.
Yeah,
Awesome.
because it's
Good
like you
luck,
can
man.
build. Thank you. I think yeah, we're gonna be following each other's journey, and I'm pretty excited to see what you build, and maybe in future we'll build something together. That'll be pretty exciting.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for this conversation, Shivan. Thanks for coming on, and I'm glad we got a chance to catch up. Your journey's pretty exciting, going from optometry to programming to indie hacker. We're going to be going on vacations in Bali and hacking stuff together
That's the hope,
there.
man. That's the dream. Yeah.
we'll, we'll invite Peter Levels and Sean Puri and Sam Parn hanging out with those guys. So we're coming for you guys. Keep an eye out. Uh, yeah, that's it for today. Have a good one, guys. I'm going to stop streaming.
Awesome.